In the quiet village of Ozu, as the night settles and the moon rises, an unsettling sound begins to echo through the darkness. A baby's cry. To outsiders, it may seem like an abandoned child, but the villagers know better. They whisper of the creature that haunts the dark forests. They call it the bush baby. It is no ordinary creature. The bush baby is said to have long, drooping breasts, and if one touches you, it will leave you paralyzed, unable to move as it approaches. But its true danger lies in its cry, a cry that mimics a helpless baby's wail, pulling anyone foolish enough to investigate deeper into the forest. The bush baby exists between the spirit world and the physical, both seen and unseen. Once you hear its cry, the danger is real, and if it sees you first, there is no escape. But there is another part to this tale. The bush baby carries a small mat, woven and seemingly ordinary. Legend says that if you steal this mat, you will be granted untold wealth, gold, bountiful crops, and prosperity. But the price is high. If you take the mat, the bush baby will come looking for it. You may grow rich, but the creature will never stop searching. And when it does, you must return the mat without being seen or suffer a fate worse than death. Obi, a young man in the village sitting by a crackling fire with his friends. The firelight casts shadows across their faces as they exchange stories late into the night. "Did you hear it last night? The baby's cry?" one of his friends asked, glancing nervously toward the forest. "I heard it. Everyone says it's the bush baby. But how do we know for sure? Maybe it's just a lost child." Obi shrugs. "Obi, don't be foolish. Remember Namdi? He went into the forest 2 years ago looking for that crying child. He never came back." His friend replied, serious, lowering his voice. Obi leans in, intrigued but unconvinced. But what about the mat? They say if you find the mat, you'll never have to work another day. Riches beyond anything we can imagine. You'll never be poor again." Obi smirked. His friends exchange uneasy glances. The fire crackles softly in the silence. They say it brings wealth, yes, but no one ever keeps it for long. Once you take the mat, the bush baby never stops coming for you. Another of his friends said, serious, lowering his voice. Obi waves off their concerns, the temptation of wealth too strong to resist. "Well, if I find that mat, maybe you'll thank me when I'm rich," Obi said, standing up. The friends fall silent as Obi, determined, leaves them by the fire. He grabs a lantern and a stick, preparing to venture into the forest alone. Obi walks through the dense forest, the trees towering over him, their branches casting long shadows on the ground. The forest feels different at night, darker, more alive, like something is watching. Obi had heard the stories his whole life, tales of the bush baby, of the danger that lay hidden in the forest. But he wasn't afraid. He was curious, and he couldn't resist the temptation of wealth. The baby's cry echoes through the trees, pulling Obi deeper. His lantern casts flickering light on the path ahead, but it feels small and fragile in the vast darkness. Obi whispers, nervously looking around. "Where are you?" Suddenly the crying stops. Obi stands still, his heart racing. The forest is eerily quiet, and all he hears is his own breathing. And then he saw it. Lying in the clearing, a small woven mat. It looked ordinary, plain even, but it glowed softly under the moonlight as if calling to him. Obi approaches it, hesitant, his lantern trembling slightly in his hand. Obi kneels down, staring at the mat. His eyes widen in awe as he reaches out to pick it up, his hands shaking. Obi whispers, "It's real. It's actually real." But the moment he touches the mat, the air grows cold. The wind begins to howl and the baby's cry returns, louder, more frantic. He had taken the mat, and now the bush baby was coming for it. Obi stands up quickly, clutching the mat to his chest, his heart pounding. He glances around, eyes wide with fear. A shadowy figure moves between the trees, just out of sight, long, drooping breasts swaying as it moves through the darkness. Realizing the danger, Obi turns and runs, sprinting through the forest with the mat tightly held to his chest. The bush baby's cry grows louder, more piercing, as if it's right behind him. Obi ran as fast as his legs would carry him, but the cry was close, too close. The bush baby was following him, its eerie wail filling the night. Twigs snap, and leaves rustle as the bush baby closes in. Obi, panting heavily. I have to get out. I have to make it back. Obi's lantern swings wildly, the light barely showing the path ahead. He bursts through the trees, stumbling into the village, collapsing to the ground as the bush baby's cry fades into the distance. Time passes and Obi's life changes dramatically. His once barren fields now grow with an abundance of crops, and he finds gold coins in his home. The villagers begin to notice his sudden fortune. The mat had brought him wealth, just as the stories said. Gold, crops, everything he could ever want. Obi had become the richest man in the village. Obi smiled as he counts coins, surrounded by wealth. His friends watch in awe, but there's a shadow of fear behind their eyes. Do you think the bush baby will come for him? One of them asked in a low tune. But Obi's joy doesn't last. At night, as he sleeps, he hears the cry again, faint at first, then growing louder. His eyes snap open and he sits up, listening. But wealth always comes with a price. Obi sits up in bed, drenched in sweat, the mat lying in the corner of his room. The baby's wail pierces the night air, growing louder and closer. One night, the baby's cry is right outside Obi's door. He wakes, heart pounding, knowing the bush baby has come for the mat. The bush baby had returned. It wanted what was rightfully its own. Obi knew what he had to do. He had to return the mat, or face the creature's wrath. Obi grabs the mat from the corner of his room, his hands trembling. He slips out of his house, the village eerily quiet under the moonlight. The baby's cry echoes in the distance, following him as he makes his way toward the forest. Obi knew the danger he was in. If the bush baby saw him, it would be over. He had to return the mat without being seen. Obi walking through the village, clutching the mat, moving toward the dark, ominous forest where shadows twist and dance between the trees. The cry grows louder with every step, as if the creature is getting closer. Obi reaches the edge of the forest. His heart races as he steps into the clearing where he had found the mat. The trees around him creak in the wind, and the atmosphere feels thick, suffocating, as though the forest itself is watching him. He kneels and places the mat down gently on the ground, his eyes darting around for any sign of movement. The baby's cry is all around him now, echoing from the trees, louder, more insistent. Obi whispers to himself fearfully, "Please, just take it, I'm returning it." Just as he stands up to leave, he freezes. He feels something behind him. His breath hitches in his throat as a long, dark shadow stretches out across the ground, looming over him. They say no one truly escapes the bush baby. You may return the mat, but the creature never forgets. Obi stands frozen in fear, unable to turn around. The shadow of the bush baby looms larger, and the glowing eyes of the creature watching him from the darkness. The baby's cry fills the air, echoing louder and louder. The next morning, the villagers find Obi's body near the forest's edge. His face is frozen in terror, his eyes wide open, staring at nothing. The mat is gone. Obi had returned the mat, but it was too late. The bush baby had taken back what was rightfully theirs, and Obi paid the price. His wealth vanished, and the village returned to its quiet, humble life. A neighboring village elder traveling to Ozu in desperation. The elder's clothes are worn, and his face is lined with worry. He sits down with one of Obi's friends, looking pleadingly into their eyes. "Our land is dying. Our crops won't grow, and our people are starving. We've tried everything, but nothing works. I've heard whispers of a mat, one that brings wealth. Do you know anything about it?" the elder asked. Obi's friend exchanges a nervous glance with another villager before speaking cautiously. We've heard of the mat, but it belongs to the bush baby. No one who takes it survives for long. It may bring wealth, but it brings death too, one of them answered quietly. The elder leans in, desperation clear in his voice. We have no other choice. If we don't find a way to save our village, we'll all starve. Please, tell me where I can find it, he asked. Obi's friend hesitates, fear flashing across their face. They lower their voice, barely a whisper. The mat. It was last seen in the forest. But be warned, the bush baby doesn't let go of what's theirs. If you go looking for it, you may not return. The elder leaves the village, determined to find the mat no matter the cost. The elder knew the risks. He had heard the stories. But desperation had a way of blinding even the wisest of men. If there was even a chance to save his village, he would take it. The elder stands at the edge of the forest, gazing into the shadows that stretch out between the trees. The wind picks up, and the faint sound of a baby's cry drifts through the air, sending a chill down his spine. Elder, thinking aloud, nervously, this is the only way. He steps into the forest, his silhouette swallowed by the darkness.